Oh, I'm going to turn this on for a moment. Good morning, everybody. Are we on the internet now? Hello, internet, and everybody that's not here. Good to imagine you all. And good to see all of you guys here. Happy to come today and bring a message. Not so happy to hear about Pastor's ailment. It sounds pretty significant. What is that, a tension pneumothorax, I'm guessing? That's a condition of your lungs or your heart. That would actually be a cardiac tamponade. But a condition of your lungs being compressed by something, either blood or air getting trapped inside of your chest cavity. So they stuck a tube in and poked a hole in them and relieved the pressure. And that is a really difficult thing to deal with. I hope that healing is coming, and I'll pray on that a little bit later. I suppose we should open with a prayer, as that is good form. Hello, guys. So we'll pray. Thank you, Father, for bringing us here together today, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to pray together and fellowship together and worship you together in this place, which is your body and your congregation. I pray that today the messages would do you honor and edify the people hearing and edify those viewing on the internet, and that we would each come away from today with something new that we learned about your character and that we can apply to our lives. I pray that you would be with Pastor's healing. I pray that you would be with Brother Ken and his healing and upcoming surgery. Jeff here has a surgery coming up. I pray that you would be with all of those situations, medical situations, that you would put your healing hand upon your people and help us to heal from our ailments. And again, thank you for the opportunity to come before you and present your word. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so I have a lot of semi-gathered thoughts to present to everybody today. We're going to start off with a video, and the video has a challenge. And the challenge is right in the video. Do you want to cue that up? Okay, so the point of this, watch this video, count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball. There shouldn't be any noise. You just have to focus on pretty much attention to detail. You move to the right slightly, and then now up a little. Now left. Now left a little more. Perfect. Hit it. Okay, so we got two teams there, white team and a black team. It's two balls. Try to count how many times you see, then pass it. Just the white team. If you weren't focusing so hard, I would talk more. Did anybody catch it? Okay.
I got 16. 12.
Okay, keep it playing. Did you guys see the gorilla? Yes. Everybody saw the gorilla? Raise your hand if you saw the gorilla. No. It's okay. So yeah, they'll play it in a second. There's a gorilla. Hang on for a second. They'll show you the gorilla, or they should. Let's rewind and watch it again. Slowly. Gorilla walks right through the center of the room and beats his chest, right?
Oh my goodness.
How?
I didn't see that.
So this is a really important lesson they actually taught us in firefighting. That was okay. You're right. It's not a monkey. It's an ape. So this is something. That's a movie. That's not. That's an ad. Okay, so this is something that they taught us about in firefighting, and as you'll get from my lesson today, a lot of it's going to be derived from things I learned in firefighting in an academy. because it has real life applications as well. Something they're talking about when they're teaching us to have situational awareness. And additionally, it's concurrent with modern psychology that you see what you aim at. Everybody in that video, most people maybe missed it. It's more like something like 50% of the room will usually see it, 50% of the room might not see it. But the point of it is you see what you look at, and we conditioned you before the video expect to count how many times the ball is moving from the white team, right? So you really only see what you look at in some situations. And it's actually a very difficult thing for the brain to segregate a specific target from everything that's going on inside of a room. Your conscious mind can't really process all of the information that's even in this room right now is happening right now. Your conscious mind has a very difficult time processing all of the information. Your unconscious mind or your subconscious that's like that 90% of your brain that's getting used when you're not really focusing specifically to do it. It uses pattern recognition, and very commonly that's why we miss something if you're looking maybe for like a specific book in a whole bunch of books, and you're looking alphabetically through these books, and it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Your brain is seeing this pattern, and it's like, okay, well, I'm at C. I'm definitely not at F yet, so it's not going to be in between the C and the D. You could skip right across it because your brain naturally sees these patterns and attaches an assumption to that information being correct. And one of the things that I've been reading recently is that's essentially it's a paradigm. So I'm sure you've all heard the term paradigm shift before. So paradigm is, for our purposes, a paradigm is a model or a theory, perception or assumption, or even a frame of reference. It's the way we see things, not necessarily, but in terms of perceiving and understanding. Paradigm is like a map of a place. The map isn't the place, it's the way to interpret the place. So if you had like a map of Paulsbo, you're looking at the map of Paulsbo. The map isn't Paulsbo, it's just the way that you interpret Paulsbo. In this video, our map of what we were seeing our paradigm was how many times, the goal of seeing that at all was how many times those players passed that ball. But what we missed, because of the lens that we had on our eyeball, is the reality of what was going on in the situation. So that reality that I'm bringing up, it's a really big term. We have objective reality and subjective reality. So in our circle, viewing through the paradigm, these balls are being passed a certain amount of times, and this is what you're looking at. Once we remove that lens at the end of the video, we then saw the situation for its totality, right? So a paradigm shift is pretty much exactly what happened just then. At the end of the video, we're like, wow, we completely saw that incorrectly. And the reason that I think that this is important, going back to the understanding of the map. If you had a map of Paulsbo, and you're looking at the map of Paulsbo, and you're standing in Silverdale, and you'd never been to either of those places, and you're trying to follow the map of Paulsbo through Silverdale to get to the mall, let's say, in Silverdale, it's not going to work. It's going to be very, very difficult. And some of the processes that people have not recently, in the past 100 years, focused on helping people to navigate their lives. Let's say the map of Paulsbo is your life, right? Is they've said we should focus on behaviors and we should focus on attitudes, because with the right positive attitude, you can get anything done, right? And if you're doing the right things, if you work hard at anything, if you have diligence at doing things, being hard and selfless in your work, you'll get far if you work really hard, right? Well, that's behavior and attitude. Now, in this understanding of the map, being Paulsbo, but you're in Silverdale, you can apply a positive attitude and follow that map all you want in Silverdale. Map of Paulsbo. You can have a great attitude like, okay, I got to the wrong turn and I took a wrong turn, but I feel great. It's okay. I feel really good. So I'm just going to take another turn and hope for the best. That attitude change isn't ultimately going to solve you. You might eventually get somewhere and you won't care that you're in the wrong place because you have a positive attitude, but that didn't achieve your goal. You can work on improving your behavior. You can work harder. You can run faster. You can try to be more accurate as you're following the map, the incorrect map in the city of Silverdale. And that's not going to get you anywhere. You'll just probably be more tired and waste a lot of energy. But if you had the correct map, if you had a map of Silverdale, if you were viewing Silverdale through the correct lens, you could then apply hard work and you could apply a positive attitude to following that map, and it would really, you would actually get where you're going to correctly. So the reason that I bring up paradigms in this video is that our life is, or our brains are very constantly using this paradigm idea to establish our experience as things that we experience are real and the things that we experience the way that they should be. Those are kind of the two types of paradigms that our brain constantly maps how we experience our life. As they are our realities, and as they should be, which are kind of like our values. And a Christian person that's following God should have some specific values and some specific realities. But where the difference or the difficulty lies is interpreting our life and our experiences through our eyes versus God's eyes. Because as we know, we don't see things correctly. I'm going to pick on Megumi. She gives me all of the best stuff each morning. If you turn to Proverbs 16, you'll see what she sent with to, I think, at least the men's group this morning. It was both. That was really cool. Proverbs 16. I'll try and get there. I have a couple other verses in Proverbs. And just the verse she sent this morning really touched on how different man and God can be. So I think her verse said it a little bit differently, but Proverbs, it was the complete Jewish Bible. Verses 1 through 4 was what she wrote out. So Proverbs 16, 1 through 4 says, "The plans of the heart belong to man, but the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. All the ways of a man are clean in his own sight, but the Lord weighs the motives. Commit your works to the Lord, and your plans will be established. The Lord has made everything for its own purpose, even the wicked for the day of evil." So what I liked about that was verses 1 and 2. Plans of the heart. We know the heart, at least in the Jewish word, the Hebrew word for heart really had a lot more, I know it's cardia, technicality, which is really like your heart, but they mean the same thing as your mind. Essentially, when you read that word heart in the Old Testament, very commonly it's talking about your mind, the plans of your heart and the plans of your mind. The things you set your mind on are what you love and what you do. But all the ways of the man are clean in his own sight. So if we view our lives as correct through the assumptions or the paradigms that what we're doing is right, it's not always the way that God sees it. And another supporting another supporting proverb is chapter 12, just a couple pages back, or swipes if you have a phone. Proverbs 15. I put 15 through 18. I think it was mostly 15. But now you have like a classification of who is right in their own eyes. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man is he who listens to counsel. That word listens is really powerful. A fool's anger is known at once, but a prudent man conceals dishonor. He who speaks truth tells what is right, but a false witness deceit. There is one who speaks rashly like the thrusts of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. A couple things I liked about that passage. It really still supports the idea that we are generally right in our own sight. And in the readings that I was doing about paradigms, it's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's a very, very influential book in modern psychology or life improvement, I guess. And what he talks about paradigms, he says, through these mental maps, we seldom question their accuracy, nor are we commonly aware of them. We assume the way that we see things is the way that they are or the way that they should be. And just like that map of Silverdale and Paulsbo, or even this video that we were watching, our actions and our attitudes, they bear out because of the way we see something. What we do is because of how we see things. So if we're seeing things incorrectly, especially comparing our sight, and I really like to think of it as a lens that you look through. Like you have a binoculars or you have a pair of glasses, and you see things through TJ's really stupid way of seeing everything as workouts, and then God actually sees it as something completely different. If I only ever see the way that I see things, then I will always assume that what I see is right. The subjective reality is the idea behind this. There's another way to view things, and you don't get to see. Holly, you had a good question. Now you're going to leave? All right. There's another way to view things very commonly in any situation. Somebody else is viewing it a different way than you are. And what we learn from the Bible is that there is truth, and there is a universal objective truth to the way that it is. And our own opinions of things are often not exactly shared with that same truth. So I wanted to go into a little bit about the word here in verse 18. He who speaks rashly like the thrusts of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. One of these other lines had something about listening. It might have been from verse 16. Listening is a very important skill set, and a lot of us don't do it well, myself highly included. And listening is something that we should do more than we speak, which is why I tried to shut my mouth as much as possible. Somewhere else in here, I found another line that was funny. A prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims folly. That reminds me of Pastor's favorite line. Better to keep your mouth shut and be thought ignorant. Open your mouth and remove all doubt. So listening is an incredibly effective skill set, not just to learn more about a situation, but to improve relationships and improve lives. Because what are we as believers if not people that should be attempting to help people improve their lives, right? And I think that one of the ways we can do that, as Pastor has said a lot of times, when you're witnessing to somebody, is to listen to them and to listen to where they're at and meet them where they're at. And you can't do that if you come into that situation with this presupposition that you're going to tell them what's right and here's why they're wrong. In my notes here, we talk about, talks about conversations in relationships should involve true and real listening. Without this, our relationship is less a therapeutic or a mutually beneficial relationship, but it's more like a dominance hierarchy where each party is trying to establish their dominance and their correctness or tell you that what they know is true. And it's more like two people holding each other's throats, shouting at each other, right? And this is applicable to our spouses. This is applicable to our children. This is applicable to an extent. Applicable to our coworkers, our friends, and it's applicable to people we meet in the grocery store or other places. Listening, I've heard the term active listening. It involves empathy. And that's not necessarily to mean that it involves sympathy. Hi, buddy. That's not to say that it involves specifically sympathy, which is to suggest that whatever person you're listening to or talking to, you feel the exact same feelings that they have, and it hits you in the heart, and you guys have this true connection because you have the same feelings. But empathy really means that you've listened fully to what they are saying, and you understand how they arrived at their point of view. And empathy is a really important thing to show somebody that you're listening and that you're having a true conversation. True listening involves openness. So there's actually a guy called Carl Rogers that said that two parties must be equally mutually ready to exchange and receive information. You can't have a conversation with somebody and expect to learn something out of it if you force them to have this conversation with you. Like the person that came to my door and said, I'm going to tell you about the kingdom of God. And I think it wasn't even in that context. It was, here's what I'm going to tell you about the Bible. And they just spouted a whole bunch of verses at me. And I was really turned off. I wasn't ready to have a conversation about God at that point. I think it was even before I started coming to church. And that conversation yielded no benefit to that person or me because I was not willing to receive information or exchange information with this person. They were just spouting their information at me. So you have to have mutual willingness to exchange and receive information. And even with a person where like 90% of what they're saying you think is dull and you're not getting information out of it, it's because you're probably not listening well. It's probably because it's your fault. And David?
Here's another one. It's verse 18, verse 13. To answer someone before hearing them out is both stupid and embarrassing.
That's a really good version. To answer someone before hearing them out is both stupid and embarrassing. What?
I think all children should memorize that verse.
Which verse is that? Proverbs?
This is in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 13.
Proverbs chapter 18, verse 13.
And when they say, what?
Yeah.
What? Proverbs totally.
He who gives an answer before he hears is folly and shame to him. I like the way yours said it a lot better.
Well, because of the fact that it's a complete Jewish Bible.
Yeah, it's a good.
I prefer that translation.
It's a really good translation.
To me.
So, because it hits you where it's true. It tells the truth, and that's what any true listening and true conversation should be. Is both parties have a mutual attempt to express the truth of a situation as clearly as possible.
What's challenging is when you're speaking with somebody and when you do not change your view to theirs and they accuse you of not listening. So they equate listening with you have changed and conformed your views to theirs,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really hard thing to navigate. When you're not listening to me, you're not hearing what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you just fine. Like I understand and comprehend everything you've said.
Mm-hmm.
But just because I haven't changed my views doesn't mean that I wasn't listening to you.
Yeah, and listening to someone and having a conversation with someone doesn't necessarily mean that they have to change your views or you have to change theirs.
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily a competition, but it should be an agreement that I will speak my side and you'll speak your side, and we will come to understand each other better afterwards. And as you and I are talking, I might just learn something that I didn't know. You have a completely different lens that you view the world through than I do. Although God says, I think in 2 Corinthians 13, he says, I implore you all to be like-minded in your thinking.
Well, we need to source our maps from the same place.
Yeah, we should, as Christians, be sourcing our maps from the same place. But it's impossible to completely do that as you are a human with a fully different history of conditioning. The way that the text you read on the video in your life is different than the text I read on the video in my life up to this point, right? Up to this point, we have had so many different experiences in our life that have created our life's viewpoint. So it's not to say that we can't arrive at a similar theory of looking at the world, but we're going to have different experience that will change the way that we communicate. But listening involves asking questions. It involves talking to somebody. As you're talking to somebody, and what this writer who is actually writing this was talking about was the great benefit of a therapist or a therapeutic conversation is you go to see a therapist. What that person does is they truly listen to what you're saying to them without they don't know you. They're like an impartial person in your life that you've never really met. They just listen, they get you to talk, they listen to you, and then they tell you how what you're saying makes them feel as if they were you. Like, wow, that would make me feel like this. And so what happens is people enjoy therapists and see a lot of benefit from going to a therapist because a lot of conversations in our lives, we're not really listening to each other. We're just kind of like, maybe I'm trying to impress you and I'm trying to tell you about something exciting that happened at work yesterday. And when you're talking...
Exciting at work.
What?
Something you found exciting.
Exactly. And when you're talking, I'm not really listening to you. I'm just waiting for my turn to tell you my exciting thing. That's how a lot of conversations go. And not to say that you shouldn't be excited to share your life with other people. Like sharing your experiences with other people is really important. But if you're listening to somebody, you're thinking about what they're saying. And one of the ways to show that, this is something I learned from Chris Voss, a hostage negotiator. He's got a book. He's got a book called Never Split the Difference, and he's got a company that coaches businesses and people and all sorts of other people how to listen to people. And he talks about a thing called tactical empathy, and meaning, again, you're not necessarily listening to their story and experiencing all the same emotions that their story or their viewpoint would elicit for them, but you're showing them that you're listening through something he calls mirroring, which is funny. It's the same thing that a therapist will end up doing when they're talking to you. As I'm talking to you, telling you my story of my day, you're listening to me, and you kind of just repeat back like the last 2 or 3 words of each point that I make or each sentence that I say. And what that does to me is it gets me to you're cueing me that you're listening to what I'm saying, and then I end up unfolding and giving more information. And while you're doing that, and a really beneficial thing that we can do for each other is, especially in the situation of like an argument where we have opposing viewpoints, is you make your statement and I make my statement or our argument, and we both attempt to summarize the other person's point of view, and this happens a lot in a fight, not in a way that's going to damage you. I'm not going to tell you, and you think I'm short, and that's because you're exceedingly tall and it's disgusting. Something like that, right? I don't know why that came up. But like a lot of people will do that same thing and they'll use it as an attack. But really listening to somebody involves more of summarizing their point of view as if you really understood it. And when they hear you do that, they might give you something like, wow, that's right. That's how I feel. You're right. And then not only have you showed them that you're listening to them, but depending on who you're talking to, they may be able to articulate your point and your feeling better than you can. And so now you're not in a conversation where you're matching wits against each other, but you're actually helping each other come to some sort of a conclusion. And again, you might learn something in the process about that opposing viewpoint that can help you and help them to communicate better. This is a perfect example is what happens, what happened to me in training at the fire station one day. And it was a short conversation. We didn't have a lot of conversation, but our goal was to navigate fire hose at a 7-man team, and then to navigate fire hose as a 5-man team, and then we whittled it down to 3 people navigating charged fire hose, which it's 2.5-inch line. I think a foot section of it as you pick it up, or a 10-foot section of it as you pick it up, weighs about 250 pounds. No, that's a heavier line. Weighs somewhere around 150 pounds. You got to pick it up, move it through a building, around turns, around inside, outside, up and over obstacles. Like things in a fire are going to be falling over, the ceilings collapse, there's desks and buildings on the ground. You got drag on all that line. You got 3 people to move it through a horizontal building, right? That's what we were working on that day. So we did okay with 6 people. It took us about under a minute to move from the fire engine to our objective through this building and out of the building to the fire, the seat of the fire. So then when we whittled down to 3 people, and it was myself, my good friend Heidi, and my good friend Devin. Devin was on the nozzle. He was the nozzleman. I was the officer. I was like leading these people. I was in charge of the whole thing, and I'm helping too. I'm shucking hose. And Heidi was bringing up the rear. And what kind of happens at different stations or at different points and pinch points on the hose, you station somebody at the pinch point and they just move the hose like this, right? And you have them going around this pinch point. Ideally not the hose is going around here and it's going to choke you when it pulls tight, right? You want to be out of that point. So what happened in our situation was we were moving the hose. I could see the objective where we were supposed to get to. Devin was on the nozzle. He could see the objective where we were supposed to get to. And Heidi was actually way in the back, and she could feel the end of the line. She could feel what was tugging on the truck, like when we were out of hose. So I'm in the middle. Devin's going towards the objective, and Heidi's right here, and we're both shucking hose. I can see Devin. I'm like, nah, he's good. He's got enough hose. And Heidi's shucking hose, and Heidi says, we don't have enough line. I need you to bump back. We need to shuck more hose in here. I'm like, no, we got it. We're good. We're okay. We got it. I'm shucking hose. And then about a minute, maybe 30 seconds after that, I hear this pass alarm going off. A pass alarm is a personal alert safety system. So if a firefighter, when we're wearing our harness and our air pack, if we go motionless for more than actually 18 seconds, our gear, if we're motionless and not moving for 18 seconds, it starts going beep, 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 beep. And then if it goes 30 seconds, it starts sounding exactly like a car alarm and just as like loud and obnoxious, because that means firefighter's down, all his team or her team needs to come and get them. And this is where they are. It's hard to see in a fire. There's smoke down to here sometimes. So it gives you this loud warning, right? So we're shucking hose, and all of a sudden I hear a pass alarm, and I was like, what is going on? And I was like, Heidi, why don't you bump up into that room and see if you can get Devin more hose? And she comes back. She's like, TJ, come here. I need you to come here. Come here. What's going on? So I go out. Devin's laying on the ground. His pass alarm's going off. And I'm like, what happened? What could have possibly happened? This is training. And what I had failed to realize during that whole section is that we weren't being tested on if we could get our hose to the objective. We were being tested on our communication, on our ability to operate together as a team unit. Heidi has her spot. I have my spot. Devin has his spot. I, as the officer, let all of us get so spread out in a real life fire, I wouldn't have been able to see Devin, and I couldn't see that he was near the seat of the fire and he could hit the fire, and we had enough hose. I also realized that I did not listen to my teammate whatsoever. Even as the leader, even as a parent, even as a teacher, even as the lead surgeon, you need to listen to your team members, and you need to apply the listening and apply the information that they have given you to affect the mission at hand, right? I didn't listen to Heidi say, hey, we're out of hose. She was the best person to tell us that we were out of hose, and we're out of hose. I didn't listen to her. So what happened to Devin? The instructor came over and said, Devin, turn on your pass alarm and go lay underneath those stairs with those things on top of you. And man, it's like I'm emotionally affected by this still because I let my team down. That could actually mean somebody died in real life. So listening is such an important key component to your relationships and even your life. I didn't even get into half of what I wanted to talk about here because I gave myself not enough time, but Colossians 3 was a really great point to drive home the point of what type of lens we should be viewing our lives through. And I also looked at it under the context of what we learn in the fire station is that people have responsibilities at the strategic level, people have responsibilities at the tactical level, and people have responsibilities at the task level. Joe Schmo just completed academy, guy like me, I have responsibilities at the task level. My lieutenants have responsibilities at the tactical level, and the chiefs and the fire marshals, they have responsibilities at the strategic level. So when I was reading Colossians 3, I thought there's so many good bits of information in here, and I can kind of apply that idea of strategic level, tactical level, and task level to this reading. If somebody can help me find Colossians, it's before or after Hebrews?
It's after Philippians.
Philippians.
So you got Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians.
Thank you. I went so far. So I never got to actually notate these parts, but I thought it would be a really good thing for us to read because, again, viewing our life through the lens that God would have us view it through, I think we would be setting our eyes on these things. And this is the first or second verse of Colossians 3 that really got me thinking on this was, keep seeking the things from above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind, or set your sight, set your viewpoint. Remember, it's the way that we interpret or perceive and understand things. It's not the way that we specifically physically see things, although that was really effective in this model earlier. Set your mind and your perception on the things of above. So we can just read through Colossians 3. It's a really good chapter. Therefore, and then again, it's conditional. Therefore, if you have been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. That's strategic level. Set your mind on the things of above, not on the things that are on the earth. If you have died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. Life is hidden. Yeah. When Christ, who is our life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. Therefore, consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality, impurity, passion, evil, desire, and greed, which amounts to idolatry. For it is because of these things that the wrath of God will come upon the sons of disobedience. And in them you also once walked when you were living in them. But now you also put them all aside: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive speech from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its evil practices, and have put on the new self, who is being renewed to a true knowledge, according to the image of the one who created him, a renewal in which there is no distinction between Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free man, but Christ is all in all. So, as to those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness. So again, when they say heart, it's mind and perception and the things that your focal point of your life. Put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another and forgiving one another, forgiving each other. That sounds more like tactical level stuff. Whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another, with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. It's a little bit more specific instruction here. So, as I was reading Colossians, I was thinking of it in those forms, not to say that some people are responsible for strategic level and some people are responsible for tactical or task level, but as we view the same model of paradigms that we were looking at earlier, the paradigm or the theory or the assumption that you're viewing your life through would kind of be the strategic level stuff. With God, we see when they gave him what is the greatest commandment of all, when Jesus was asked that by the Pharisee or the scribe, he said, we must love the Lord our God with all our hearts and all our mind and all your soul and all your strength. And he was quoting Isaiah, I think, when he said that. And then the second is love your neighbors as yourself. That's kind of a strategic level, like this is how we should do our life. And this is the viewpoint that we should have when we're going throughout our life. But then when you get to tactical level, that's kind of like the attitudes and behaviors from our viewpoint, which are going to be birthed, right? Tactics really mean behaviors. And behaviors can be subcategorized down into actions. So the Bible isn't really specific on specific actions. It's like we have this to or about God's character and to give us guidance for how to navigate our life through the character of God. It doesn't give us today, you're going to wake up. And after you wake up, it's your snooze button 8 times until an hour later. It doesn't give us those specific instructions. It gives us strategic level and some tactical levels we can apply to our lives. So it's kind of to attempt to view our God. In Psalms, it also says, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him. His eyes on us. He's setting his sights and his heart on us. He made us to be a special creation, or a different creation. We're the only creation that we know of that has consciousness and is self-aware. We can think about having thoughts. It's a crazy thing. And God has set his eye on us and he's set his heart on us. So if we to have a mutual benefit with God, we could try to in our hearts on him and view our lives and view life that help us not just change our tactics and our tasks, but do them the way that God would have us do it. That's all I have for you. Any questions? Sweet. No questions is good. Internet, we will see you at 11:20? 11:20 we will restart and we'll have some music. Or we'll have our Brother Ryan bringing a message. We will close with prayer. If somebody would like to close us in a prayer. Megumi, would you close us? Thank you.
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time we have to gather together. We ask you to help us to focus on the bigger picture and set our mind on things that are from you. Please help us to listen to what you want us to listen to and listen to people and not argue with them. Give us the words to say to them. Thank you so much for this freedom to worship